That cost how much? Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Becky and this is TheSorryGirls, a channel where we teach you how to make really cool things. So today's episode is an episode in our long ongoing series called That Cost How Much? And if that wasn't explanatory enough of a title, basically this is a series where I take things that I've seen out in the wild that make me wonder why they cost so much, and I try and make them for a more affordable price range. So today I'm gonna be tackling two different home decor items that represent trends I've been seeing a lot going on these days. So the piece in question we're gonna start with today is the Solstice Line by West Elm. They have a couple versions of this basically same idea. They have a coffee table that ranges from $600 to $800 depending on the size of it, and an entryway table that is about $700. I think I'm gonna try and do like a hybrid item of all of these and do like an end of bed bench. And I'm hoping my overall cost to make this is nowhere near any of these numbers, but honestly, given the price of lumber these days, I'm a little skeptical. So speaking of lumber, that's the first place I'm gonna start. I'm gonna pick up a lot of wood to build the base of this table, and then we'll worry about covering it with that texture later. So let's head to the hardware store. Okay, here we are. So this is the really nice finished stuff. It's got a really nice veneer top, but either way, it's expensive. And then we've got this stuff that's definitely a little rougher, but I'm covering it anyway, so maybe it doesn't matter. And this is only $44 a sheet, and I would only need one, so. I'm calling Rochelle to verify some things for me. Okay, I'm gonna go with the mid-range option, not the cheapest one, not the most expensive one. I'm gonna have it cut here because it's a huge piece. I just don't feel like carrying it by myself. Also, that saves me one less cut I gotta make at the office. Wood has been sliced. Let's go. Okay, I'm back from the hardware store. I picked up a bunch of different types of wood. I'm doing it this way because I want to try and make this as affordably as possible. So I'm using the good wood where I think I need to, and the more affordable wood in other places. This will all make sense in a second. But what I'm gonna start with is building the front piece of my bench. So this piece is a 4x8 sheet of 1/2-inch plywood. I had them just cut it down at the hardware store like you saw to make it a little more manageable. I have it cut to 18 inches, which is how tall I want my bench to be. And the big 4x8 sheet of this was around $53, and I'm gonna get both sides out of this, so. Okay, so far. I'm gonna start by crafting the front piece out of this. This is the one piece I'm gonna have to draw a custom shape because I want this to be very solid and hold the whole thing together. And once this is cut, then we can use all our different wood to kind of wrap and build the 3D bench. So I have two of these pieces cut to 18 inches, and I'm gonna draw my front shape on this, and then we'll cut it out. This is how I think I'm gonna do my rounded edges. I'm not sure what size we need either. It's like Goldilocks. This one's too big. This one's too small. So I need to make two pieces out of these curved shapes. So I've got two pieces of wood here that I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna try and save myself a little bit of time and cut through both of them at once. But because this is such a precise shape, I need to make sure I'm doing exactly the same thing through both pieces. So I think what I'm gonna do is screw them together temporarily with some screws so that neither of the boards shift while I'm making my cuts. And then I think I can just wood fill the holes later. The trick to using a jigsaw in a place where you're not starting from the edge is to drill a hole with a drill bit that's bigger than your saw blade. That way you can just drop the saw blade into the hole and start cutting from wherever you want. bench. Yay, let's separate this thing.
Do you want to sand it together?
Rochelle with the good advice, always. Two pieces are gonna go like this, the back piece and the front piece. That was the most complicated step, so if you're with me so far, congrats. I think we've done the hardest part. So now on to how we're gonna connect this together. I guess you could like look at this as the skeleton of the table. We'll build the skeleton, then we'll wrap it with one layer of muscle, then put some skin on it. I hate where I'm going with this analogy, it's terrible. So I've already pre-cut down 12 pieces of this. This is 2 by 2 pine, and I got it in an 8-foot length. I ended up having to buy 2 pieces of the 8-foot length, and I think my total for that was $8.86. So with my 12 pieces of 2 by 2s, I'm now gonna screw this between the pieces we cut earlier to complete my frame. You could totally freehand screwing the slats to your side pieces, but I found that pre-drilling both a hole in the side piece and in the slot allows you to screw them together perfectly, since it's really important at this step that your slot pieces are exactly centered between your edge pieces. Pretty good?
Not terrible.
Not terrible. Yeah. The standard we aim for. Look guys, we have a bench, or we have the bones of a bench, and it looks to be structurally sound, but I think the best way to know is to just sit on it and make sure it works before we move on. It might be uncomfortable, but I have to know. Okay. Okay. I think it's good. I think it's good. It feels good. I'm hearing minor cracks. It's because it's settling, right? Once it has the muscles on it, it's gonna be even more structurally sound. I'm not worried. This is looking great. I think we can confidently move on. So to prepare this bench to be ready for the linen-esque texture we're gonna do at the end, I need to wrap all the exposed parts in something that we can then adhere our fabric or paper to. Just stay tuned to see what we end up doing with that. But what I ended up doing was going with 2 different wood options because I was trying to keep my price down. So we're gonna start with the more expensive wood veneer, and that is what I'm gonna be using for the corner bits, the place where we need the wood to be round. So there's going to be 4 spots: top left corner, bottom left corner, and then top right, underside right. So you could go with like a really just thin sheet of MDF that you wanted to carefully bend and nail into place, but we decided to do something a little more fun today at Team TSG, and I'm gonna show you how you can cut a sheet of wood to make it kind of corrugated. Is that what you'd call it? That's not really the word. We're gonna DIY ourselves like a wood tambour effect. We love that here at the office, and that's gonna enable the wood to bend around our corners beautifully. So let me show you how. To start, I'm cutting out 4 rectangles of my poplar plywood that are the width that I want my bench to be, and then long enough to wrap around the curve. It's important that you're using plywood that has a good veneer on one side because that's what's going to hold our curve together. Next, adjust the base plate on your circular saw so that the depth of your cut cuts almost through the plywood and stops at your very last layer of ply. So as you can see here, my cut almost made it through to cut 2 separate pieces, but didn't quite go far enough. Making multiple of these straight cuts close together is what's going to allow the wood to bend. If your wood is still feeling like you need to apply a lot of force to get it to bend, you can wet it with some water and let the wood soak for a little bit. This should make your wood even bendier. If you have to force it too much, it could snap, and that would be sad. Okay, time to install our bendy corners. I am placing this piece of plywood between the 2 edge pieces that we've already cut and screwing down the one side. Then you can slowly start to bend your wood along the curve and screw it in place as you go. So now what I have left to do is just cover in the remaining exposed parts. This will be very easy because they're all just straight, flat, rectangular pieces. It's simple math to just measure the gap that's missing. and fill it in. And for this, again, I can go back to my inexpensive wood, which was that 4x8 sheet I was using to build this. It doesn't need to be the nice expensive stuff because we're not bending it or doing anything fancy to it. So that, again, is keeping my cost a little lower.
Through the magic of TV editing, I now have another piece.
Oh my goodness, wait, all of a sudden I need a Forrest Gump quote. I don't know. When he's on the bench, is that when he says the chocolate line? Life is like a box of chocolates. Anyways, that all to say, I feel the most supported right now, physically and emotionally, by how well this is going. This is going to need a lot of wood filling, all of the screws, and some sanding to make it beautiful. So I'm gonna do that. It's gonna take some time to dry. So I think while that happens, we move on to our next DIY project in this video. Okay, on to project number 2. For this, we're gonna be tackling the oblong shaped mirror. I'm seeing kind of these round shaped things everywhere. They're really having a moment. If you caught our ASAP Science loft makeover, we used a lot of these. We were calling them amoeba-esque shapes. They're my favorite. I love them. And specifically, I'm really seeing them in mirrors. The one in specific today I'm going to be using as my example, even though there are many people who make similar things, is by the brand Ferm Living. This mirror retails for $469 US, which is just, it's quite a lot of money. So I'd love to find out if I can make it for less. I think the first place to start with any good DIY project, if you're familiar with our channel, is a trip to the thrift store, because it's a deep conviction of mine to use things secondhand when I can to give them another life. So off we go. This is so nice. What? That is sick and huge. Hold on, you need me for scale. Okay, I'm back. Had a actually very successful trip at the thrift store. I don't know what it was, but it was definitely the right day to go to the thrift store if I was looking for art. There was so many amazing, like, large scale pieces of art. I wish I had walls to buy them all. Although actually, I maybe did make it home with one painting. That might make it in a vlog later. But anyways, about the mirror, I was able to find a mirror. This one's pretty big. It's about 2 feet by 3 feet in mirror, which I think will make a great blobby pond shape. And this mirror from the thrift store cost me a grand total of $11.87 when put into US dollars. So my first step is going to be opening this mirror up, taking the actual mirror portion out, and figuring out what shape I want to do. Because I'm a bit of a perfectionist and don't trust myself to draw my shape perfectly onto the mirror in one go, I went ahead and drew it onto some craft paper first. Once I was happy with the shape, I cut that out and then used that as a stencil to trace the shape onto the mirror with a Sharpie. Shape is all drawn out. Now we need to get into the meat and potatoes, which is how the heck we're gonna cut this and cut this shape out nicely. We've been doing a lot of testing and researching, and I think I figured out what's really gonna work for us. If you've seen any of our videos in the past where we've cut mirror and or glass, we've used a tool like this. This is a very basic glass cutter. As I was testing it on a more oblong shape, I was having a hard time holding this and getting a nice smooth cut, but you are welcome to try this. But today, what I'm gonna be using instead is this glass cutter. This is a pistol grip glass cutter, and I find like you can just hold it a little better. And the tip's got some movement to it, so if you're kind of going on those curves, it follows you a little bit better. The price for this guy, which we got from Michael's, was $7.50. Quick little PSA, glass can be dangerous, so protect yourself by using appropriate eyewear. Instead of attempting to cut this whole shape in one go, I'm splitting it up into cuts that go along the straightest parts of my shape. I'm showing you with this red Sharpie here where I'll actually be making the first cut so that I start and end off of the mirror. This is just going to give me the best chance to make a clean cut. This terrible scratching sound you're hearing is exactly the sound you want to be hearing as you're making your cut. If you aren't hearing this, you probably aren't applying enough pressure with your glass cutting tool. The tool is not actually cutting all the way through the glass here, but it's instead scoring it so that when you apply pressure, it will break exactly along this line. I'm placing a pencil under where I want my break to be and then applying gentle pressure on either side of it, and the glass should cut perfectly. Yeah, it's a good day. Now I'm just gonna continue that process all the way along my mirror. What we found to be helpful is using an all-purpose oil on the blade to really help it move as smooth as possible and get you the best possible cut. And this cost us $6.70.
I was gonna say, protect yourself before you wreck yourself. Then I realized that's not how the saying goes, is it?
Very relieved that worked out well. Honestly, preparation is like 80% of the battle, just testing it, having the right tools made all the difference here. So we've got the shape cut out. Now there's still a little bit of jaggedness to some of the cuts, and the overall shape of this mirror is pretty sharp. So be careful when handling it at this stage, but I am gonna give the edge a rough sand. This is 80 grit sandpaper. It should smooth the edges out, no problem. Just be careful again when you're touching this mirror because this is sharp glass. Everybody would recommend glasses, gloves, and definitely a mask at this point because you don't want to breathe in any glass dust. All right, now we have to tackle how we're actually gonna hang this mirror. This glass is quite thin, so I do want to put a back on it, and also a backing allows me to put hanging hardware on it, which, speaking of, these are D-rings. I like these for hanging heavy things, and a 2-pack of these is about $2.56. And I will be screwing those into a piece of scrap plywood. I have this cut down to be like a little bit smaller than my overall mirror. So this is scrap wood that I just owned. Actually, conveniently, I owned it from the first DIY that we started earlier in this video. For the sake of the concept of this video series, I'm gonna put a price on this. The smallest piece of ply lumber you can get is like a 2-foot by 2-foot square piece, and I think that's about $11.88 for a piece, so we're gonna say that this is $11.88. Bit high, but if you had to buy it from scratch, this is what you'd be looking at. So because I am nervous to put a drill anywhere near my freshly cut mirror, I'm gonna screw this onto the wood first, and then we'll tackle gluing this to the mirror second. It's the next day. I think my glue has sufficiently dried. It's been well over 24 hours, so we're good to flip it. And there is one final detail that the Ferm Living Mirror has on their mirrors that I'd like to do to this one, and that is a really nice brass edge around the mirror. So my edge is not that thick, so I think I'm just gonna spray paint it. This will be super easy. So my first step is gonna be taping off anything I don't wanna get paint on. And then we can take it outside and hit it with a little bit of spray paint, which, speaking of, I'm gonna use this bright gold spray paint, and this is 548 4 can. So my mirror is now completed, but I know what we all want to know is prices, and did this end up being less or comparable to the original price? So materials all in to make this mirror today cost me $54.40, and compared to the original price of $469 US, I think that's a pretty good savings. Also, if you were able to factor in things like maybe you already had a mirror you wanted to upcycle and you already owned a can of gold spray paint, this would severely drop your price even more. All in all, I'd say this DIY was well worth trying, and I think we made a great dupe of it. But there's still one more we have to finish, and that's the table, so let's get to that. All right, the time has now come to cover this beautiful waterfall edge bench that we have made so far. So I believe the original one is probably actually made from a fabric that has then been lacquered, or it looks that way. But my plan all along has been to use wallpaper that has a linen-like look, because wallpaper is pretty easy to manipulate and work with. So I was able to find this wallpaper on Home Depot's site that's $62.10, and it is a linen-like wallpaper, so it will totally give us the look we're going for. But then I was in the good old thrift store the other day, as I always am, and I found an unused roll of wallpaper that has a pretty fabric-like texture, if you ask me. And this was only $3 for an entire roll of this. It was so meant to be, but for the sake of this video, if you were gonna do this DIY as well, we're gonna go with the $62 price, just because odds of you finding a $3 roll in the right texture at your thrift store, probably low. But I'm gonna use this because I like to use secondhand when I can. And then once that's done, we'll get to how we're gonna coat it and finish it. I'm starting by loosely cutting out the shape of my side pieces and then using a foam roller brush to cover it all in wallpaper glue. Non-pasted wallpaper like this kind needs to sit for a couple minutes to absorb the glue properly. You can fold it up so it doesn't dry out during this process, and this process is called booking, if you were curious. Once the glue has fully soaked, I'm then opening it back up and I'm laying it along the side of my bench. I'm trimming down any excess wallpaper, leaving about 1/2 inch all the way around the edges, and that's what I'm going to use to fold over. To fold over the corners, it's helpful to do these little slits so that you can make the paper fold on a curve, and then for the straightaway pieces, I'm just pushing them over and laying them flat with my fingers. Once I have both sides done, it's now time to move on to the top and bottom. This part's gonna be especially easy because you can just lay the piece down flat. I started by lining up the one edge perfectly. The other side is gonna overhang a little bit, but I can trim that down once it's been laid. To do the trimming, I'm just using a small X-Acto knife blade to cut off any of the excess. We are now on to the very last step, which is very exciting, and that is to finish it all. I mean, I think in theory you could leave it like this and it would be okay because it's wallpaper, but I do want to just really make sure it's as durable as possible. And to do that, I'm going to use this product. This is shellac. It just dries nice and hard. Feels like a weird way to describe it. Everyone behind the camera is now 12. But I think this is gonna be our best bet in protecting this and making it really durable going forward. So to apply it, I'm gonna use a foam roller. Again, they are just great and don't leave brush strokes. My table has been shellacked. It is looking so good. I feel like we entirely nailed the idea of like this fabric looking textured piece. It looks really good. The original one, as a reminder, was in the range of $700 depending on price. And when I added up all the materials it might take you to make something similar, I got it down to $186 and some cents. But if you want to factor in the fact that I got that $3 wallpaper, this project today cost me $127.90 to make, which that's a pretty good savings if you ask me. And the benefit of doing it yourself is that you get to make it like I did, to a custom size, whatever you'd like. That is all I had for you today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. This was really fun. I love when we get to do these things together. It's always a really fun challenge for myself. So let me know in the comments below which items, which companies, which expensive things you've seen that you want to see me try and recreate for a lesser cost, because I'm always on the hunt for those good finds. And if you want to see more episodes of these where we've done maybe some of your other favorite designer brands, may I recommend the entire playlist of past episodes. There are quite a lot. And if you are enjoying these, also consider subscribing so you don't miss out on future ones when they come out. Every week we are here giving it to you guys, so subscribe would really be like the nicest way to show your appreciation. Thank you so much, guys. I'm gonna leave you with a sneak peek of what is coming up next week. Bye.
In today's video, I'm gonna be taking on the challenge of recreating old TSG DIYs. Now, my real goal is to hopefully improve them. And the nice way of me saying that is to elevate them or modernize them or add a little Rachel spice.
And then like this is how you can stand it. The most professional. Come on, how else would you do this?
You're just doing a replay because you're saying, I love it.